At the reception desk, no one comprehended the Japanese millionaire until the black cleaner offered her coffee in Japanese. That Asian woman has been causing a disturbance at the reception for more than 40 minutes. Sandra Morrison, manager of the opulent Grand Plaza Hotel, vociferously exclaimed, while dramatically gesticulating as three expert translators exchanged glances in complete hopelessness. Japanese millionaire Akiko Tanaka remained perfectly still, resembling a marble sculpture, her gaze conveying a potent combination of increasing exasperation and disdain. Her personal assistant was rapidly typing on his mobile phone, likely canceling numerous multi-million-dollar appointments that were contingent upon that particular lodging arrangement. Near the lobby's entrance, Denise Washington was subtly cleaning the Italian marble floor, observing every detail of the mortifying situation that had been unfolding for nearly an hour. At 32 years of age, she had acquired the skill of virtually disappearing during her 6-year tenure as a cleaning woman at that 5-star establishment. "Mr. Martinez, contact someone else," Sandra commanded the concierge, who was already perspiring noticeably, adding, "This circumstance is escalating into a global diplomatic incident." The third translator, an expert in East Asian dialects, shook his head in resignation, declaring, "She does not speak Mandarin, Korean, or Thai. I have attempted everything, but she simply disregards us as if we were imperceptible." Denise briefly paused her floor scrubbing, fixating her gaze on the Japanese businesswoman with an inscrutable countenance. A certain quality in her eyes conveyed a profound comprehension that no one else in the reception vicinity appeared to possess, as if she were the sole individual present who genuinely grasped the unfolding events. Sandra Morrison traversed back and forth, her costly footwear resonating forcefully on the floor Denise had just finished cleaning. "Should we fail to resolve this within the ensuing 15 minutes, I will be compelled to annul the booking for the presidential suite. Consider the financial detriment to the hotel," she stated. The junior receptionist quietly conveyed to his associate, "Mrs. Tanaka owns one of the largest technology networks globally. If she departs from here discontented, our international standing will be compromised." The Japanese woman eventually articulated, speaking swiftly in her mother tongue and gesticulating with refined poise. The translators appeared utterly bewildered, while Sandra Morrison rolled her eyes, displaying visibly increasing impatience. It was at that instant that Denise unhurriedly straightened her posture, letting the cleaning rag fall beside the pail. Her actions were deliberate and exact, akin to someone who had reached a momentous conclusion after meticulously observing the entirety of the degrading predicament. For many years, she had observed innumerable comparable occurrences within that exclusive setting, consistently maintaining her silence while influential individuals abused less privileged workers. However, this particular time, a distinct quality was evident in her resolute gaze. What no one within that opulent foyer could conceive was that Denise Washington harbored a confidential ability potent enough to transform the diplomatic emergency into an entirely unforeseen outcome, and that her involvement would initiate a chain of occurrences that would permanently alter the authority structures of that hotel. If you find this narrative of surmounting difficulties engaging and are eager to discover the extraordinary mystery Denise conceals, remember to subscribe to the channel to follow how an ordinary cleaning lady is on the verge of revolutionizing this hotel. "My forbearance is exhausted," Sandra Morrison declared, forcefully striking her fist on the marble counter, causing all the staff members to flinch. "That Asian woman is making my hotel a global mockery." Akiko Tanaka maintained a composed and emotionless demeanor, yet Denise observed her fists subtly clench with each discourteous utterance. The businesswoman evidently comprehended considerably more English than she indicated. Her facial expression unveiled not merely a linguistic impediment but profound outrage regarding the disrespectful manner in which she was being dealt with. "Miss Morrison," the receptionist interjected anxiously, "perhaps we ought to attempt a more." "More what?" Sandra retorted, whirling on her heels, her eyes gleaming with fury. "I have already squandered 2 hours of my agenda on this absurd circumstance. If she is incapable of communicating in English, she ought not to be lodged in a preeminent American hotel." Denise experienced a familiar sensation of heat in her chest, the identical feeling she encountered whenever she witnessed this form of hubris disguised as proficiency. Her grip tightened around the broom handle, recalling countless analogous scenarios where she had been treated as inanimate objects by affluent patrons. The manager proceeded with her vehement denunciation, now making exaggerated gestures to the modest gathering of spectators that had assembled in the foyer. "Observe this," she said. "One of the most lavish suites in the hotel is occupied by an individual who cannot even request an additional towel." "Sandra, kindly moderate your volume," the concierge murmured, feeling mortified by the public spectacle that was transpiring. However, Sandra Morrison was entirely unconstrained, propelled by the conceit of someone who had never encountered genuine repercussions for her conduct. "No, sufficient with the political correctness," she declared. "This is an American enterprise, and if individuals desire our superior provisions, they should at minimum articulate in our tongue." It was at that juncture that Denise experienced a distinct memory of her own ordeals several years prior. She had been unjustly dismissed from her preceding employment at a janitorial firm for safeguarding a Latina associate who was being disgraced for not speaking impeccable English. The harsh paradox was that Denise conversed fluently in 5 languages, an aptitude she had gained during her period as a voluntary translator for philanthropic bodies, a history she had intentionally concealed to obtain this foundational position when she was in dire need. "Perhaps we ought to summon security," Sandra proposed with deliberate malevolence, observing Akiko Tanaka as if she were an undesirable trespasser. "If she is unable to communicate appropriately, she unequivocally does not belong within this establishment." The implied menace reverberated through the lobby, eliciting uneasy murmurs among those observing. Akiko Tanaka subtly elevated her chin, her stance disclosing an unyielding self-respect that sharply contrasted with the coarseness of the circumstance. Denise observed with escalating resentment, recollecting how she had acquired Japanese over 2 years while volunteering at a community center that catered to Asian immigrants. She had dedicated entire evenings to learning not merely the lexicon but also intricate cultural nuances, propelled by an authentic zeal to assist individuals confronting impediments akin to those she comprehended intimately. "Do you know what truly exasperates me?" Sandra persisted with her detrimental display, now plainly exhibiting for the attentive guests. "It is this supposition that we must conform to them, when in reality, they ought to be striving to assimilate into our customs." Akiko Tanaka's assistant ultimately lost his composure and commenced speaking swiftly in Japanese to his boss, indicating the way out. It was evident that they were contemplating annulling the booking and seeking alternative lodging, which would signify an immense pecuniary detriment and a global disgrace for the Grand Plaza. Denise sensed an internal shift occurring within her. It was no longer merely subdued outrage but an intensifying resolve she had acquired through years of confronting bias in diverse environments. Her gaze briefly connected with Akiko Tanaka's, and for an almost imperceptible instant, both women shared an unspoken comprehension of the actual events transpiring in that lobby. The Japanese entrepreneur murmured something to her assistant, who promptly commenced typing on his phone, likely canceling not only the hotel booking but also the multi-million-dollar agreements her corporation was deliberating with American collaborators situated in the urban area. Sandra Morrison, entirely oblivious to the monetary repercussions of her lack of awareness, persisted with her exhibition of bigotry, unaware that every haughty utterance was being mentally recorded by Denise, a woman who had learned that authentic power occasionally reveals itself precisely when others anticipate our subservience. As the strain in the lobby reached its climax and Sandra Morrison readied herself for her subsequent public debasement, something remarkable began to emanate from Denise Washington's eyes. It was neither resignation nor apprehension, but the type of quiet resolve that emerges when an individual ultimately determines that the opportune moment has arrived to transform years of inequity into an admonition that no one would ever forget. Denise Washington had reached her conclusion. She unobtrusively placed the cleaning cloth on the cart and proceeded with deliberate paces toward the assemblage encircling Akiko Tanaka. Her motions were precise, like someone who had envisioned this circumstance in her thoughts for a long period. "Pardon me," she uttered softly, addressing the Japanese businesswoman directly. Her voice was hushed, but there was an attribute in her inflection that caused several heads to pivot. Sandra Morrison rotated on her heels, her eyes blazing with absolute indignation. "Excuse me, you are interfering with a crucial client service scenario. Return to your responsibilities immediately." But Denise did not avert her gaze from Akiko Tanaka. In impeccable Japanese, delivered with a Kyoto pronunciation that demonstrated years of profound study of the culture, she uttered softly, "Tanakin jimen nasai kana hu no and aishitsuryu anatamari were a kayashayu." The ensuing stillness was absolute. Akiko Tanaka fluttered her eyelids repeatedly, as if incapable of comprehending what she had just heard. Her countenance underwent a complete transformation from irritation to authentic reassurance, then to profound inquisitiveness as she observed this black woman articulating in her tongue with a mastery that few non-natives could achieve. "Anata Nihongo Juasuka?" inquired Akiko, her tone revealing her absolute astonishment. She desired to ascertain how Denise could converse in Japanese with such fluency. "Hai Sukashi dekamasu," responded Denise humbly, stating she spoke a small amount, although it was manifest that her competence extended considerably beyond fundamental levels. Sandra Morrison was entirely immobilized, her mouth agape in profound shock. The expert linguists exchanged embarrassed glances, realizing that an ordinary cleaning woman had accomplished in mere moments what they had been unable to do in hours. "That is inconceivable." Sandra eventually regained her faculty of speech, but now with a hint of apprehension. "You cannot simply—" "How can a cleaning lady—" Akiko Tanaka interceded, interrupting Sandra with a graceful wave of her hand, addressing Denise once more in Japanese, "Deneho atsuhi?" Denise subtly smiled. The entrepreneur was inquiring about where she had acquired Japanese, commending her articulation as exceptionally refined. Her retort that she had pursued studies at a university in Kyoto and cherished Japanese culture caused Akiko's eyes to brighten. It was unequivocal that Denise not only communicated in the language but also possessed a profound grasp of its cultural intricacies. Sandra Morrison was experiencing what could only be characterized as a public mental collapse. "This cannot be occurring. You are a cleaning lady. You are not even permitted to engage with the patrons." It was at that precise instant that Marcus Johnson, the head concierge and the sole other black staff member in a leadership capacity at the establishment, approached discreetly. He had been observing the entire incident, and his gaze conveyed a blend of admiration and genuine solicitude for Denise. "Miss Morrison," Marcus intervened diplomatically, "perhaps we should permit the circumstance to naturally resolve itself. Our guest appears to finally be receiving appropriate attention." Attention from a cleaning lady, Sandra was entirely forfeiting her professional self-possession. "Marcus, are you witnessing this? This individual is instigating a global public disgrace." Akiko Tanaka, who had comprehended every single English word, gazed at Sandra with a chilling countenance that caused the surrounding atmosphere to feel colder. In articulate, exact English, with merely a slight intonation, she uttered, "The sole individual generating a scandal here is you, miss." The astonishment was immediate and overwhelming. Sandra Morrison reeled as though she had received a physical blow. "You have been speaking English all this time." "Fluently," Akiko affirmed, her voice heavy with restrained contempt, adding, "and I comprehend perfectly every bigoted and xenophobic affront that has issued from your mouth for the previous 2 hours." An awareness began to permeate the lobby akin to seismic waves. Guests who had observed the public disgrace commenced murmuring among themselves, their visages progressively shifting from awkwardness to indignation at Sandra's deportment. Marcus Johnson advanced discreetly, positioning himself adjacent to Denise. "Miss Washington," he stated formally, employing her surname for the first time in years, "I value your assistance in this sensitive predicament." Denise inclined her head respectfully. However, a novel quality was present in her eyes. No longer the yielding demeanor of an individual accustomed to being unseen, but the serene resolve of someone who had finally resolved that the moment had arrived to be acknowledged for her authentic self. "Tanakan," Denise proceeded in Japanese, "if you would grant me leave, I wish to clarify certain misapprehensions concerning your booking." I believe we can expeditiously resolve everything. Akiko nodded with sincere thankfulness, but also with an escalating curiosity regarding this extraordinary woman who had appeared from obscurity precisely when she required her most. Sandra Morrison, realizing she had entirely relinquished command of the situation, frantically endeavored to reassert her authority. Denise Washington, you are formally suspended. Relinquish your duties immediately. The menace reverberated through the lobby, but this time it failed to achieve the desired outcome. Denise looked directly at Sandra, and everyone present could discern a transformation occurring in real time. It was neither apprehension nor capitulation, but the type of tranquil might that arises when an individual ultimately determines to cease concealing their true identity. I comprehend perfectly, Miss Morrison, Denise responded with a composure that verged on the extraordinary. But before I depart, I would like to ascertain that our patron is afforded the deference she merits. What Sandra Morrison was unable to perceive, obscured by her conceit and preconceptions, was that every discourteous utterance, every discriminatory motion, had been meticulously noted not solely by Denise, but by Akiko Tanaka, an individual whose global sway could render that flourishing hotel a relic of the past with merely one telephone communication. As the strain within the lobby attained a crucial juncture and Sandra Morrison prepared to intensify her campaign of degradation even further, something remarkable began to manifest in the atmosphere. It was not merely a staff member defending a patron, but the commencement of a metamorphosis that would disclose the inherent character of every individual present at that pivotal instant, demonstrating that occasionally the most influential person in a setting is the one everyone has opted to disregard. The foyer of the Grand Plaza had been converted into a stage where Sandra Morrison was on the verge of discovering that she had selected unsuitable adversaries for her exhibition of bias and haughtiness. Akiko Tanaka gracefully retrieved her phone, initiating the recording device that had been functioning imperceptibly throughout the public disgrace. Miss Morrison, she articulated in a frigid tone, I wish to elucidate a few points concerning my identification before this dialogue concludes. Sandra was unmistakably panicking, her complexion fluctuating between crimson with fury and pallid with escalating dread. I fail to comprehend what is transpiring here. This circumstance is entirely unmanageable. My complete designation is Akiko Tanaka, Chief Executive Officer of Tanaka Technology International, the businesswoman persisted, her voice reverberating through the now utterly silent lobby. Our corporation holds business lodging agreements valued at $12 million per annum with American hotel organizations. The subsequent stillness was absolute. Marcus Johnson, the head concierge, briefly closed his eyes, apprehending the scale of the disaster Sandra had engineered. The remaining staff members exchanged glances with expressions of mounting dismay. Furthermore, Akiko proceeded unyieldingly, I am an associate of the International Tourism Board that accredits premises for Asian executive guests. A detrimental endorsement from me could lead to the revocation of agreements valued at tens of millions of dollars each year. Sandra Morrison commenced visibly trembling, at last grasping that she was not contending with a typical visitor but with an individual possessing sufficient influence to entirely ruin the hotel's standing with one solitary determination. But more crucially, Akiko slightly elevated her tone, ensuring that everyone in the lobby could distinctly hear, is that for the preceding 2 hours, I have documented every bigoted utterance, every prejudiced action, and every manifestation of xenophobia that has originated from your lips. That cannot be lawful. Sandra faltered despairingly. You cannot record discussions without endorsement. Marcus Johnson advanced, his tone professional yet resolute. In actuality, Miss Morrison, in communal spaces such as the hotel lobby, there is no lawful expectation of confidentiality. All of our surveillance cameras also captured the entire occurrence. The comprehension impacted Sandra akin to a calamitous tidal wave. Not only had her statements been recorded, but they had also been filmed by the hotel's proprietary surveillance apparatus, generating undeniable proof of her prejudiced conduct. Akiko Tanaka touched her phone screen with exact motions. I have already transmitted duplicates of this recording to the tourism administrations of 4 nations, to the national executive body of this hotel franchise, and to my public relations division in Tokyo. No! Sandra practically shrieked, entirely forsaking her professional self-restraint. You cannot ruin my vocation due to a misinterpretation. Misunderstanding. Denise Washington finally spoke, her voice imbued with an authority no one in the hotel had previously perceived. Miss Morrison, I have been employed at this establishment for 6 years and have observed innumerable comparable circumstances. The distinction is that today, your casualty possessed the capacity to protect herself. Akiko inclined her head respectfully toward Denise before resuming her overpowering counteroffensive. Ms. Washington, I wish to inform you that I took the liberty of examining your professional history while observing the situation develop. Sandra Morrison appeared to be experiencing an absolute mental collapse, recognizing that she had entirely forfeited command of the circumstance and that each passing moment merely exacerbated her predicament. I discovered that you hold an academic qualification in linguistics with a specific focus on Asian civilizations, have served as a voluntary interpreter for charitable associations, and are proficient in 5 tongues, Akiko persisted, addressing Denise with authentic admiration. You embody precisely the kind of specialist my corporation seeks to broaden our United States endeavors. The astonishment on the visages of all the staff members present was immediate. For numerous years, Denise had been regarded as expendable workforce, when in reality, she possessed credentials that the majority of hotel administrators could only fantasize about acquiring. Marcus Johnson observed Sandra with a countenance that blended incredulity and profound professional disillusionment. Miss Morrison, not only did you disgrace one of our most significant guests, but you also neglected an extraordinary aptitude that was directly within our purview. Sandra was now utterly frantic, attempting to discover some method to rescue her demolished vocation. I can clarify, it was a taxing instant. I did not intend to. You intended precisely what you articulated, Akiko interjected frigidly. And thanks to contemporary advancements, your authentic viewpoints concerning individuals you deem distinct are now perpetually recorded. Sandra's mobile phone commenced ringing insistently. It was unmistakably her superior supervisor, likely already cognizant of the global calamity she had orchestrated. Her hands were trembling so severely that she could barely answer the telephone communication. Hello. Her voice emerged as a stifled murmur. Yes, Mr. Davidson, I can explain. No, sir, I was unaware she was. While Sandra frantically attempted to vindicate herself on the telephone, Akiko turned to Denise with a proposition that would entirely transform her existence. Ms. Washington, I wish to extend to you a role as coordinator of cross-cultural relationships at our American division. The initial remuneration would be $90,000 annually, in addition to comprehensive entitlements. The stillness in the lobby was absolute. Denise had transitioned from an imperceptible cleaning woman to an international executive within a span of mere hours. All because she possessed the fortitude to act correctly at the opportune moment. Sandra Morrison terminated the phone call, her complexion entirely pallid. I have been terminated, she declared to the unoccupied lobby, her voice faltering. Dismissed for valid reason. I shall never be capable of employment in the hospitality sector again. Justice had been administered in a comprehensive and crushing fashion. Sandra had lost not merely her employment but also her professional standing, her commendations, and any prospect of pursuing her vocation in her selected domain. Concurrently, Denise was ultimately being acknowledged for the remarkable aptitude she had invariably possessed. As Sandra Morrison collected her personal effects under the scornful gazes of the very associates who had once held her in high esteem, a solitary inquiry lingered in the strained atmosphere of that altered lobby. Was it conceivable that a singular deed of bravery and self-respect could entirely reformulate the principles of authority and esteem that had controlled that milieu for numerous decades, demonstrating that occasionally genuine societal upheaval commences with an individual who simply declines to remain unseen when observing inequity? 6 months subsequently, Denise Washington occupied her executive office on the highest floor of Tanaka Technology International, surveying the impressive cityscape through the expansive windows, a vista she had once only known from the viewpoint of someone cleansing lavatories and corridors. Her metamorphosis had been thorough and motivating. As the coordinator of cross-cultural affairs, she had already actualized diversity initiatives at 12 collaborative enterprises, established commercial conduits between formerly marginalized communities and the corporate sphere, and formulated cultural instructional guidelines that emerged as a nationwide standard. Denise, the assembly with the Japanese executives is verified for 3 o'clock, announced her aide, Marcus Johnson, who had departed the Grand Plaza to serve as a principal associate at the nascent firm. The alliance between them had proven exceptional. Two individuals who profoundly appreciated the significance of discerning latent ability. Perfect, Marcus. And how is our new intern? Denise inquired, referring to a youthful Latina she had found employed as a chambermaid at a different hotel, who conversed fluently in 4 languages yet was entirely disregarded by the administration. She is excelling beyond all anticipations, Marcus smiled. Precisely as you foretold she would. At that precise moment, elsewhere in the city, Sandra Morrison was seated in a cramped, dilapidated dwelling, perusing periodicals in pursuit of any employment prospect. Her termination from the Grand Plaza had evolved into a national outcry after Akiko Tanaka disseminated recordings of her prejudiced behavior. Sandra's prestige had been utterly annihilated. No prestigious hotel would even contemplate her curriculum vitae. Her kin had distanced themselves following the public disclosure of her biases, and she had forfeited not merely her profession but also her communal and pecuniary recognition. Digital platforms persistently reminded her of her anti-foreign remarks, transforming her into a national emblem of how preconception and haughtiness can ruin an individual's existence in a few hours. Each endeavor to re-establish her professional persona was impeded by the widely circulated video chronicling her complete disgrace. Concurrently, the Grand Plaza had undergone an absolute cultural transformation. The new administration, cognizant of the international controversy that had nearly obliterated the hotel's prestige, enacted stringent diversity and integration initiatives, obligatory cultural awareness instruction, and advancement policies grounded exclusively on merit and capability. Akiko Tanaka had evolved into not only a habitual patron but also a minor financial contributor to the hotel, guaranteeing that the alterations were enduring and substantial. Her impact had remade the Grand Plaza into a national paradigm of welcoming and considerate guest services. You know what fills me with the utmost pride regarding this entire narrative? Akiko observed during her midday meal with Denise at her preferred Japanese eatery. It was not solely assisting you in discovering your authentic position in the world, but demonstrating that when we acknowledge and cherish genuine multiplicity, everyone benefits. Denise inclined her head, recalling that pivotal instant in the hotel foyer when she resolved she would no longer persist unseen in the face of inequity. For years, I was convinced that my academic background and proficiencies were valueless because the individuals surrounding me declined to perceive them. I ascertained that the issue was never with me. And Sandra Morrison? Akiko inquired with sincere curiosity, devoid of malevolence. I am informed she is employed as a clerk at a department store, Denise replied without malevolent gratification. I genuinely hope she assimilated something precious concerning deference and modesty. Authentic fairness is not about annihilating individuals but about cultivating prospects for everyone to mature. That afternoon, as Denise directed a video conference involving executives from 5 distinct nations, interpreting and arbitrating multi-million-dollar negotiations with the identical facility with which she had once cleansed marble flooring, she meditated upon the extraordinary journey that had led her to that point. Her narrative had developed into a source of encouragement for countless individuals through digital communication platforms, filmed documentaries, and inspiring addresses, not as an account of merciless retribution but as substantiation that genuine influence resides in acknowledging one's intrinsic worth irrespective of the viewpoints of others. The paramount precept Denise had internalized and now imparted to audiences globally was that the optimal reaction to bias is neither animosity nor resentment, but irrefutable distinction that compels even the most dubious individuals to acknowledge reality. Sandra Morrison had attempted to disgrace her, reduce her importance, and render her imperceptible. However, She ultimately generated the precise conditions that enabled Denise to radiate with a brilliance she would never have unearthed under typical circumstances. Occasionally, our most formidable adversaries inadvertently assist us by revealing our inherent resilience. Presently, while Denise Washington directs one of the most prosperous sectors of a multinational corporation, Sandra Morrison endures the enduring repercussions of mistaking transient social standing for authentic human significance, demonstrating that ultimately, true triumph does not consist of annihilating those who inflict harm upon us, but in constructing something so remarkable that it renders any endeavor to lessen our eminence inconsequential. If this chronicle of metamorphosis and equity resonated with you, subscribe to the channel and disseminate it to someone who requires a reminder that their significance is not contingent upon the validation of others but upon the fortitude to display their true identity to the world when no one else has faith in their capabilities.